Everyone ignored the CEO's paralyzed daughter at the gala, until a single dad asked her, "Can I be your date?" The night had just begun, but the air inside the Blackwell Investment Group's annual gala already felt heavy, polished, and staged. Crystal chandeliers hung like glowing crowns above the marble floor, scattering glitter across gowns and tuxedos. Every corner shined with practiced perfection, the kind only limitless money could buy. Waiters in crisp white gloves glided through the room with trays balanced as if they carried gold. Champagne flutes bubbling with light, and hors d'oeuvres that cost more than a week's paycheck. The guests moved like an elegant machine, chattering about mergers, profits, and vacations in places most people only ever see in magazines. And yet, in that glittering ballroom, there was one person nobody really looked at. Elena Blackwell sat near the edge of the room, her wheelchair carefully positioned behind a towering arrangement of white orchids and roses. She hadn't chosen the spot. Her father always insisted she arrive early, always insisted she sit where she could be seen, though in reality she wasn't seen at all. Her blonde hair was pinned softly at her neck, makeup flawless, gown a custom pearl shade that shimmered under the light. She looked like a porcelain doll, polished, elegant, untouchable, and invisible. It hadn't always been that way. 3 years ago, Elena Blackwell had been the very center of nights like this. She didn't just attend galas, she commanded them. Her laughter carried above the music. Her smile pulled people into her orbit. Photographers followed her, men lined up just to dance with her once, and women envied the way she seemed to float across the floor in heels that clicked like applause. But all of that was before the crash, before the newspapers printed the headlines, before her spine fractured and left her with wheels instead of heels. Now, at the place that once felt like her stage, she sat like part of the furniture. Guests brushed past with polite smiles, avoiding her eyes. They muttered quick "excuse me's," but never truly looked at her face. A man in a tux even stepped in front of her chair, obliviously blocking her view while he snapped a selfie with his wife. Elena's hands tightened against the armrest, her expression carefully still. That was when the unnoticed service door creaked open. From the shadows of the hallway, a small figure slipped into the ballroom barefoot. Curls bounced as a tiny girl, no older than 3, darted between gowns and polished shoes. Ava Hart had escaped the lounge where she'd been coloring while her father worked backstage as part of the crew. Her broken crayon had decided her fate. She was going to find a new friend. Her little eyes scanned the room full of glittering strangers until they landed on the only person who seemed alone. She marched up with all the confidence of a queen in her red corduroy dress, and plopped down cross-legged at the wheels of Elena's chair. "Why are you sad in a princess dress?" she asked, voice bright and curious, as though the question was as simple as asking someone's favorite color. Elena froze. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Then, unexpected, unstoppable, a sound escaped her lips. A laugh, soft, startled, pulled from deep inside her chest. The kind of laugh she hadn't felt in a long, long time. "I'm not sad," she said, though her smile gave away more truth than her words. "You looked sad," Ava replied, tilting her head. "But now you don't." Before Elena could answer, a worried voice echoed from the drapery. "Ava! Ava, sweetheart, there you are!" A tall man appeared, slightly breathless, hair tousled from rushing, his event crew shirt creased and marked faintly with paint. He hurried forward, bending with apology. "I'm so sorry, she's not usually—" His words stopped mid-sentence. His eyes met Elena's, and instead of pity or discomfort, he offered her the smallest, warmest smile. Then he crouched down, not condescending, not out of obligation, but simply so his gaze aligned with hers. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said gently. "But if the lady doesn't already have a date tonight, may I apply for the role?" Elena blinked. Her brows lifted in surprise. "Did he really just—" Ava clapped her hands, delighted. "Yes, she can be our princess." The man chuckled, brushing his daughter's curls from her eyes. "We've been looking for one," he added, still watching Elena. Her mouth opened, but the words caught. For once, she wasn't ready with the usual polished response, the well-practiced polite smile. She simply smiled, soft and real. A real one, she whispered. I think the position is open. He extended a hand. Not formal, not rehearsed, but genuine. A hand offered in kindness. And Elena took it. Somewhere across the ballroom, the string quartet struck a waltz few paid attention to. But in that quiet corner, something shifted. If this moment made your heart pause, if you believe the most powerful connections are born in silence, not spectacle, tap the hype button. Sometimes the story worth telling isn't in the spotlight at all, but in the shadow just beyond it. This was only the beginning. Music floated like perfume through the hall, elegant but forgettable. Elena sat beneath the roses, her chair neatly tucked beneath the linen-draped table, her fingers brushing the untouched stem of her glass. She remembered the years she danced in rooms like this, rooms just as grand, where champagne fizzed like secrets and cameras flashed until her vision blurred. Back then, she didn't just attend, she was the event. Heads turned, conversations stopped, and laughter followed wherever she went. But that was before. Before her spine snapped at C7. Before the papers called her life a tragedy. Before the invitations kept arriving, but the people stopped coming close. Old friends smiled from across the room, avoiding real conversation. Her ex vanished before her second surgery. Even relatives, once eager to share brunches, now came with pity disguised as courtesy. Everyone had learned how to look past her. Everyone but one man. Liam returned after guiding Ava backstage with a juice box and coloring book. Elena had expected him to disappear, like everyone else eventually did. But he didn't. Instead, he reappeared with 2 small cupcakes in hand. Chocolate or something pretending to be passion fruit? He asked with a grin. Full disclosure, I trust neither. Elena blinked before reaching for the chocolate. This one looks less like a science experiment. Smart choice, he said, settling into the chair beside her. Not across, not hovering, simply beside her, eye to eye, she noticed. Most people bent awkwardly, crouched or stood too tall. But Liam didn't treat her like fragile glass. He simply aligned. So, he said, unwrapping his cupcake. How's life in high society exile? A laugh escaped her again before she could stop it. You say that like you've been here before. I've worked every kind of party, he replied. There's always one table everyone ignores. And the food always looks better than it tastes, she grinned. This chicken was definitely once a shoe. Careful, he leaned closer. I think the garnish was worth $1,000. And for the first time in years, Elena spoke without scripts, without filters. They talked about Ava, how she once tried to feed a squirrel with crayons, how she called rain sky sprinkles. Elena smiled softly. She thinks I'm a princess. She thinks Band-Aids are magic, Liam said, and that soup can fix heartbreak. So yes, you're royalty. Elena's gaze lingered. Why are you being kind to me? Why wouldn't I be? He answered without hesitation. Most people spoke to her chair before they spoke to her, but Liam didn't glance down once. 3 years ago, Elena whispered, this room stopped looking at me. Liam tilted his head. 3 years ago, this room got boring. Another laugh slipped through her lips, unfamiliar but warm. I forgot what it felt like, she said quietly. To laugh with someone instead of being smiled at. He studied her for a long moment. Then, softly, he said, maybe they stopped seeing you. But I didn't need a spotlight to find you. Silence followed. But not the kind that ached. The kind that filled. Something flickered inside Elena's chest. Not hope, not yet, but maybe recognition. And as the music swelled, as the world continued pretending, 2 people sat side by side. One in a black folding chair, the other in a wheelchair. And for the first time in years, Elena didn't feel absent from her own story. Sometimes it only takes one person to look at you and remind you, you're still here. The music had softened into something slower now, strings and silence, the kind of song that ushered guests toward their last flutes of champagne. But Elena wasn't watching the dancers. She was watching him. Across the ballroom, Liam pushed a heavy lighting stand, guiding it gently through a narrow service doorway. Over his shoulder, Ava was curled like a kitten, her small arms around his neck, Her cheek nestled into the crook where work shirt met collarbone. Elena didn't know why she followed. Maybe it was the easy way he moved between worlds, seen but unnoticed, useful but invisible. Or maybe it was the question echoing in her head since they'd spoken. Why is someone like him so kind when the rest of the world forgot how? She rolled forward quietly until the music and laughter faded behind her. The hallway backstage was dim and cluttered. Crates, cables, quiet conversations, and in the middle of it, Liam sat on a bench, gently rocking a vase she slept. He looked up, surprised but not startled. "Hey," he said softly. "Didn't think you'd come back here?" "Not exactly the champagne lounge. I don't drink much these days," she replied. "Wheelchair and wine don't mix well." He smiled faintly. "Fair point." Elena hesitated, then rolled closer, stopping just in front of him. "She looks safe with you," she said, nodding toward Ava. Liam glanced down at his daughter. "She's—" There was a pause, then quietly. "I wanted to ask you something if it's not too personal." He looked up again, curious but open. "Ask away." Elena took a breath. "Why are you like this?" "Like what?" "Gentle, real, present. Most people, they fade into small talk or disappear completely. But you," she shrugged. "You brought cupcakes. You sat down." Liam leaned forward, resting Heiselbows on his knees. His voice was even. "My wife passed away 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. It moved fast, too fast." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." She was brave, he said simply. Didn't complain even when the doctor stopped calling it treatment and started calling it time. Elena blinked but said nothing. Ava was barely old enough to speak full sentences, he continued, but she kept asking, "Where's Mommy's smile?" And I didn't know how to explain why someone so good could disappear like that. He exhaled slowly, eyes never leaving Ava's sleeping face. "I didn't want her to grow up thinking beauty was what magazines or movies told her, or that love was something shiny and loud. So I told her the truth. I told her," he glanced up straight into Elena's eyes, "that beautiful people make others feel safe just by being around even when they're quiet. Even when they're hurting." Elena didn't respond. She couldn't. Something in her chest cracked, sharp and sudden. It wasn't pain exactly. It was something deeper, a place she'd locked up so tightly for so long it barely remembered how to feel. Her hands trembled slightly on the wheels of her chair. Her breath caught and then tears. Hot, silent, unstoppable. It was the first time she had cried in 3 years. Not in frustration, not in private, but in front of someone, in front of him. Liam didn't rush to comfort her. He didn't reach out or apologize for making her feel. He just sat with her in the quiet. A man with grief in his past. A woman with steel in her spine, and a little girl asleep between them. A living bridge made of second chances. Sometimes it doesn't take a grand gesture to break down a wall. Sometimes all it takes is one sentence spoken with truth and someone brave enough to sit with you when the tears finally fall. The air in the ballroom was warmer now, pulsing with conversation and champagne. Laughter echoed like crystal chimes, floating above the hum of soft jazz and clinking glasses. Elena sat where she'd all evening, off to the side, near the edge of the marble balcony. The shadows softened her presence, and noon seemed to mind she was there, which, in the world of Elena Blackwell, had become a quiet kind of mercy. She sipped water from a stemmed glass, watching the dancers like someone observing a dream she no longer belonged to. "I'd kill to have her dress," someone whispered behind her. "Oh, darling," another voice replied, sharp and polished. "At least she still gets invited. Some of us wouldn't come if we were half a woman." The words sliced through the warmth like ice water. They weren't whispered low enough. Elena turned her head slightly. The woman who had spoken stood less than 3 feet away, wine glass in hand, diamond earrings catching the light. Her expression was that particular brand of smiling cruelty, sweet enough to seem civil, just sour enough to leave a scar. Elena didn't flinch, but she didn't speak either. She was used to this. It came dressed in pity, mockery, or condescension, but it always arrived eventually. And yet, before she could turn her chair away, a quiet voice interrupted. "Funny," Liam said, stepping into view, calm and unshaken. "You're fully able-bodied and still manage to be less human than a 3-year-old. The woman blinked, startled. "Excuse me." Liam didn't raise his voice, didn't square his shoulders or posture. He simply stood casual and steady beside Elena's chair. "My daughter spent 5 minutes with Miss Blackwell and called her a princess," he added, looking directly at the woman. "You spent 30 seconds and called her less than whole. I think that says more about you than her." Silence fell like velvet across their corner of the room. The woman's eyes narrowed, her lips twitching with outrage. But before she could respond, Liam gently placed his hand on Elena's. "Let's get some air," he said quietly. He didn't ask. He didn't pity. He simply offered her a way out without drama, without shame. Elena hesitated only a second before nodding. As he began to wheel her toward the terrace doors, a tiny pair of feet ran to join them. Ava had reappeared from the shadows of the staff corridor, somehow knowing exactly where to be. Ill a touch, she slipped her small hand into Liam's free one, then reached for Elena's. Her fingers barely wrapped around two of Elena's, but the grip was firm. The three of them moved slowly through the gala, past dresses that cost more than Liam's entire month's paycheck, past men in silk ties and polished disdain, and not one of them stopped the trio. Outside, the night air was cool and scented with lavender. Fairy lights twinkled across the garden path, and distant music floated behind them like a fading echo. They reached a stone bench near a fountain, and Liam paused, setting the brake on Elena's chair. "That was reckless," Elena said, finally breaking the silence. Her voice was low, but her eyes held something unreadable. "No," Liam replied, crouching slightly beside her. "That was honest." Their eyes met, his calm and unshaken, hers searching. She didn't know what to say, not yet. Ava broke the quiet by clambering onto Liam's lap, pointing at the stars. "That one's the sparkly one," she announced. Liam chuckled. "They're all sparkly, kiddo." "No," she said stubbornly. "That one sparkles for real." Elena tilted her head, following Ava's tiny finger. "Then I guess that one's ours." The little girl nodded solemnly, then leaned over and placed her head on Elena's arm. And in that moment, surrounded by the fading glow of wealth that had never welcomed her, and the quiet, undeniable warmth of two people who had, Elena realized something. Being seen, truly seen, had never required a spotlight. Oh, just someone brave enough to stand beside you in the dark. The house was silent when Elena returned. The gala dress had been hung carefully back in its protective cover, though her hair was still twisted in its soft, elegant shine-on, and makeup clung faintly to her cheeks, like memories not ready to be wiped away. She didn't turn on any lights. The moonlight spilling through the windows was enough. Her wheelchair moved slowly across the hardwood floor, the familiar creak in the right wheel echoing louder than usual. She stopped by the kitchen counter where her housekeeper had neatly stacked the evening's unopened mail. On top was something that didn't look like a letter at all. A folded piece of thick white construction paper. Crayon markings, slightly crooked edges, her name written in bold red letters. Elena, except the E was backward. Her hands froze. She opened it slowly, her breath catching. Inside was a drawing, messy, colorful, undeniably drawn by a 3-year-old. Ava had tried to sketch 3 stick figures. One tall with yellow hair sitting in a round circle, Elena. One tall with brown hair holding her hand, Liam, and one tiny one with pink shoes. In between them, arms stretched wide. Above it, in mismatched letters written by an adult, but clearly dictated by a child, were the words, "Can you be my second mommy? You're prettier than Cinderella in the wheelchair." The breath left Elena's lungs as if someone had pulled it straight from her chest. And then the tears came. Not soft tears, not the kind that simply roll down cheeks in some quiet, poetic way. These were the kind of tears that came from a place buried under years of pretending to be fine. The kind of sobs that made her press the drawing against her chest, curl her body forward as far as she could, and just let go. She hadn't cried like this since the accident. Not when the doctors said she'd never walk again. Not when her fiancé disappeared a week after. Not when her so-called friends gradually stopped calling. But tonight, over a crooked crayon sketch and the clumsy love of a child who had nothing to gain, her walls cracked open. She remembered the silence of the hospital room 3 years ago, the beeping monitors, the white sheets, the dread sitting on her chest like a second spine. She remembered waking up and asking for him, and she remembered the nurse hesitating. He left a message. The nurse said, "He sends his love." That was it. Because it was easy to love the golden girl when she sparkled. It was easy to be proud of Elena Blackwell when she turned heads walking into a ballroom, but now she was slower, heavier, less shiny. Or at least that's what the world told her. And yet one child, a 3-year-old who knew nothing about social status or perfection, looked at her and saw a princess, a better Cinderella. Elena's hand trembled as she reached for a blank sheet of paper. She didn't hesitate. She began to draw slow, thoughtful strokes. She wasn't an artist, but she knew how to create beauty in her own way. Her fingers moved across the page with intention. A soft sweeping gown, a pair of pink shoes, a crown made of sunflowers. At the center, a smiling little girl with wild curls and shining eyes. Next to her, a woman in a wheelchair, dignified, glowing, powerful. Above them, she wrote, "Every princess has her moment, but the real magic is who you choose to dance with." At the bottom, in delicate handwriting, "From your not yet mommy, Alina." She placed the drawing in an envelope, kissed the flap, and sealed it. Then for the first time in a very long time, Elena looked in the mirror and didn't see the girl she had lost. She saw the woman she was becoming. Not perfect, not broken, just beautifully real. And maybe, just maybe, that was more than enough. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of soft golden day that asked nothing of anyone. Alina had woken up early, earlier than she had in months. She wasn't used to mornings in the kitchen or planning anything that didn't involve board meetings or physiotherapy appointments. But today she was hosting. The table had been set with her grandmother's blue and white china. One dining chair now had a small wooden booster seat built by hair assistant in a rush, but hand-painted by Elena with pink flowers and tiny yellow suns. It was for Ava. Alina had done the cooking herself. She'd Googled kid-friendly lasagna, sliced strawberries into little hearts, and even attempted a bear-shaped pancake. The pancake failed horribly and was now face down in the trash, looking like a crime scene. But when the doorbell rang and she heard that tiny voice call out, "Miss Sunshine, are you home?" None of it mattered. She opened the door right in time. Ava ran inside with the urgency only toddlers had, while Liam stepped in behind her, scanning the room like he'd just walked into a page from a home magazine. "I think this is the cleanest house I've ever been in," he said. "Wait until we start baking," Elena replied. "It'll be a disaster by dessert." And it was. An hour later, the kitchen counters were dusted in flour, and so was Ava's hair. Liam had chocolate on his sleeve. Elena had batter on her collar, and the only thing louder than the mixer was their laughter. They made cupcakes together. Ava sang a made-up song about sunshine moms and pancake dads while swirling frosting onto warm cakes. Then came story time. Ava sat snug between them on the couch, a picture book spread across their laps. But instead of reading, she made a request. "Tell me about your princess dress. The one you wore when you were sad." Elena blinked, caught off guard, but then she smiled. That dress was waiting for the right day. The day a little fairy reminded the princess she still belonged in the kingdom. Ava nodded seriously. "I'm the fairy." Liam laughed softly, resting his arm behind Elena along the couch. For the first time in years, Alina didn't feel like she was watching life through a glass wall. She was part of it until the phone rang. Liam stepped into the hallway to take the call. Elena watched as his shoulders tensed, his voice dropped, and his hand tightened on the back of a chair. He returned looking different, like something had snapped into place. "Or maybe cracked. Is everything okay?" she asked. He hesitated. "That was my event coordinator from the gala." Her smile faded. "And there's a photo going around of us, you, me, and Ava. It looks like we were close." She held her breath. "They may suspend me," he said indefinitely. She felt the words like a punch. "Because of me." "Because of how people see you," he said gently. "Or don't want to see someone like me beside someone like you." Ava was in the kitchen playing with cookie cutters, blissfully unaware. "I'll call my father." "I can fix this," Elena offered. But Liam shook his head. That's not the point. Then what is? He met her eyes and his voice was calm but heavy. Maybe we come from two different stories after all. She didn't speak. I don't want Ava to think love is something that gets people fired, he added. Or that it only works if you're willing to disappear for it. He wasn't angry, just tired. I never asked for this attention, he said. But I can't pretend it doesn't cost something. I never meant for this, she whispered. I know. But meaning well doesn't make it harmless. She had so much to say, but nothing came out. Ava returned, holding a heart-shaped cookie. Look for you. Elena smiled, though something inside her ached. It's beautiful. Later, as dusk rolled in, Liam packed Ava's things. He didn't slam the door. He didn't kiss her goodbye. He just left quietly, respectfully. And for the first time since they met, Elena wasn't sure if he'd come back. The rain tapped softly on the windows like a quiet metronome, keeping time with the silence that had settled inside the Blackwell estate. For 7 days, Elena hadn't stepped outside. She had canceled everything, board meetings, charity events, even her physical therapy. Her staff moved carefully around her, unsure whether to offer comfort or space. She wasn't crying, but something inside her had gone silent. The light that had briefly flickered back into her life had dimmed again, and this time she wasn't sure it would return. Then came the knock on her door. It was Margaret, the longtime housekeeper, holding a slightly damp envelope. Miss Blackwell, this came for you, delivered by hand. Elena took it slowly. The paper was wrinkled, the edges smudged from rain and little fingers. She opened it and froze. Inside was a crayon drawing, rough and innocent. 3 figures stood hand in hand, a little girl with pigtails in the middle, a tall man on the left, and a woman on the right, seated in a wheelchair, yellow hair flowing like sunshine. Below the picture was a message written in adult handwriting, but clearly dictated by a child. This is my family. She's better than Band-Aids. Ava, age 3. Elena stared at the drawing until her vision blurred. She then, for the first time in over a year, tears fell, not quiet ones, not graceful, but full, shaking sobs that came from a place buried too long. She pressed the drawing to her chest, holding it as if it might disappear. That night, as the rain deepened and the sky turned charcoal gray, Elena rolled through the empty hallways of her family's estate and stopped at the tall oak doors of her father's office. She knocked once. "Come in," came the familiar deep voice. He looked up, surprised to see her. She rarely visited this room anymore. Elena didn't wait for pleasantries. She placed the crayon drawing gently on the edge of his massive desk. Her father adjusted his glasses, frowning. "What's this?" "My answer," she said. "To what?" "To everything you've tried to make me." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was calm, sharp, and steady. To the perfect daughter. The silent heiress. The woman who stays quiet in the wheelchair because she ruins the picture. His brow furrowed, but he didn't interrupt. "I know you've tried to protect me," she continued. "I know your silence came from fear, not shame, but I won't live my life in a picture frame." "Elena, no." She looked at him directly. Finally, completely. "You wanted me to be a crown jewel, but I'd rather be a cracked window that still lets light through. I don't want a title. I want a life, my life." For a moment only the rain filled the silence. Then slowly her father removed his glasses, rubbing his temple. "You've always been stronger than I knew," he said quietly. "Perhaps I was the one who needed the picture." Elena gave him a faint, tired smile. Then she picked up Ava's drawing, now slightly smudged with her tears, and she left the room, not with rebellion or bitterness, just a strange, soaring sense of freedom. Later that night, Liam opened his front door to the sound of the old gate creaking. He blinked. Elena was there, soaked from the mist, her hair slightly damp, cheeks pink from the chill. In her lap was a frame. Inside it, the drawing, Ava's drawing, framed, protected, treasured. Liam stepped forward but said nothing. Before he could speak, Ava's voice rang out behind him. "That's me," she squealed, pointing. "That's you. That's her." She clapped her hands and danced in a circle. "Now it's real." Elena laughed softly, wiping a drop of rain from her cheek. She lowered herself a little so she was at Ava's level. "Thank you," she whispered. voice catching. For not forgetting me. Ava hugged her without hesitation. Liam stood frozen, overwhelmed. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She never forgot. He looked at Elena. Neither did I. The garden behind the Blackwell estate had never looked more alive. Fairy lights swung through the trees, soft music drifted from a quiet quartet, and wildflowers filled the air with their gentle scent. But there were no cameras, no media, no speeches. Just a small circle of people who matter. It was the annual gala, but not like before. This time Elena Blackwell didn't arrive under the spotlight. She arrived as a bride. Her gown, designed by herself, flowed elegantly from her lap, parting gently around the frame of her wheelchair. There were no heels. She didn't need them. She wasn't radiant because of diamonds or designer labels. She was radiant because she had chosen this moment, and it had chosen her back. At the altar, Liam stood still, his hands steady but his breath shallow. He adjusted his tie-ons twice, then stepped away. Elena saw him leave the arch. She wheeled after him, intercepting him quietly. "Liam?" He turned, eyes heavy. "I don't know if I can give you the life you deserve. Not the stage, not the title, not the world you came from." She reached out, took his hand and said, "I don't need a world. I need your eyes. When you look at me like I'm the only thing still glowing." That was all it took. He came back. The ceremony began beneath a sky that couldn't decide between sunshine or rain. Elena and Liam stood beneath a simple arch of ivy and white blossoms. Beside them, Ava clutched her basket of petals, her dress slightly oversized and perfect. The officiant spoke. "Today is not about pageantry. It is about presence, not about legacy, but love." Elena turned toward Liam, ready to speak her vows. But Ava stepped up first. "I have something to say," she declared. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The officiant smiled. "Go ahead." Ava lifted the mic with both hands. "I promise to share my daddy with you forever," she said proudly. "As long as you still make him pancakes." Laughter again this time through tears. Liam kissed her head. "Deal." They exchanged rings. Liam's hands were gentle. Sure, Elena's didn't tremble. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant said. Eva shouted, then clapped. And when Liam kissed Elena, it wasn't flashy. It was soft, real, sacred. Later, as twilight washed the sky in lavender, Elena's voice carried gently over scenes of celebration. Cake being cut, Ava spinning barefoot, Liam draping his jacket over Elena's shoulders. The world once watched me disappear, but someone small, someone kind, kept me seen, and that was more powerful than any crown I ever wore. The screen faded to black, but long after it ended, something inside stayed lit. Thank you for watching this story of quiet courage, unexpected love, and the kind of family you choose. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. If Elena, Liam, and little Ava touched your heart today, if their journey reminded you that being seen is sometimes the greatest gift of all, then we invite you to stay with us. Subscribe for more tales that speak to the deepest parts of who we are. And if this story moved you, tap the hype button. It's a small gesture, but it helps us bring more stories like this one to life. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, stay open, because you never know when someone will show up and change everything.